What is the most NSFW thing you have heard while on a conference call at work? In high school, I was active in the theater department. I acted and did tech, not at the same time, obviously. The night of dress rehearsal for Noises Off, one of the spotlight operators, who was notoriously thick in the head, decided to make a quick bathroom run before the show started. He cued his radio, announced his plans, and walked to the bathroom. Somehow he'd managed to double tap his talk button on his walkie, so after he finished telling us he was going to use the restroom, the headset stayed live. 20 crew members heard him pee, and whistle, and fart, and fail miserably at hitting on a girl in the hallway. Probably not the worst story in this thread, but it's mortifying for a high schooler. Quick. Okay, so this isn't NSFW, but it's one of the funniest things I've been a part of. We have a weekly teleconference with about 15 to 20 contractors and a project manager, software development. The meeting starts at 11 AM on Fridays. Well, for the past 2 weeks somebody, who presumably takes lunch at noon, has started playing Out Whoever Has the Floor with horrible jazz elevator music. At first it starts out softly in the background, but by noon on the dot it's so loud that it's impossible to continue the meeting. It's a dial-in conference setup. There is no way to tell that it's me. Let me throw myself under the bus here. Happened in the 90s. Years back I worked for female VP. I worked from home and basically had two cordless phones. One had a plug for a headset, but no mute button. Other had a mute button, but no headset plug. So I'm on a very long team call and switch over to the headset so I can move around and free my hands. Out of nowhere, I get that gut-wrenching pain that lets me know I need to offload the troops immediately. I was crowning as I ran to the bathroom, dropped trow and sat. Then the panic set in, no mute button and the troops were breaching the barricade right that moment. I proceeded to unleash a 30-second torrent of gas and liquid at a decibel level that could cause temporary hearing loss. There was a brief respite while my bowels reloaded. I noticed the call was dead silent. Only broken by the VP saying recont life, I'm buying you a phone with a mute button. I managed to get out, make sure it has a headset jack before hanging up. About 10 years later I was having dinner with some old friends from that company. They told me that this story was still the VP's favorite one to tell at the bar. I worked for one of those big enterprise companies that like to have an all hands conference call every quarter. Everyone could mute their own phones, which you should do, unless you're asking a question, and the organizer could mute everyone but themselves, which they usually did just in case someone forgot to mute themselves. Most of us were in the office, but there were a fair number of people that worked remotely from home. So we had our pep talk from the SVP, and the secretary gets on the line and says, okay, we are going to take the main line off mute for the Q&A session. As soon as she does, everyone hears, oh my god, you son of a bitch, I told you not to bother your father at work. Get over here. No, Dad, I'm sorry. Ow, Daddy, you're hurting me. Ow, we are turning the conference mute back on. Please submit your questions through the web portal instead. Never found out what happened to the guy, even if they figured out who it was. Someone thought they had put in on mute and hadn't. She's on a different fucking planet. She doesn't understand a word anyone is fucking saying, so why does she feel the need to join in with retarded sentences? Apostrophe. That is a word for word translation. While not on a conference call, it's just before a conference call. My company conference calling info is auto-populated into Outlook meeting requests. The North American number is 1-877-NNNNNNN. The Australian number is 1-800-AAAAAA. A North American client accidentally dialed 1-800-NNNNNN. Wrong toll-free code, but proper last 7 digits, and got a sex line recording that has a sultry woman saying, hi there. Are you feeling really horny? The client was 5 minutes late for the actual teleconference call, and he was killing himself laughing, wondering WTF kind of teleconferencing service we were using. I now give the sex line number to those that need a good laugh. I got this. So me and a few more coworkers were on a call/webinar. The call leader, my boss, had to share his screen to show a PowerPoint. He had dual screens, and what was on the other screen wasn't the PowerPoint. He just assumed that the pages was being shared. Nope. As he was reciting his plan, to launch a new product. We watched an Asian man get rammed in the ass by a well-hung black man. No one would say anything. I texted him and said your choice in porn is pretty specific. He didn't leave his office the rest of the day. Not a conference call, but I monitor calls for a call center in Utah. I was listening for the group located in Provo one day when I happened across a 25 to 30 minute long personal call of one of our more notably difficult employees. We'll call him Jay. It started off innocent enough. Employee was returning his roommate's call to get some notes from a class and to pick up the dog from the groomers or something of the sort. The roommate, E, seemed upset, so the employee started to pry. He opened up a little saying that he had hung out with his friend of the female persuasion again last night. Jay told him that wasn't a good idea because he knew that things had been getting heated recently and he'd hate to see it go down the wrong path. He insisted that nothing funny was going on between them and that it was just friendly. They went back and forth a bit and he admitted that maybe things were happening and that he just craved being touched by women. Any touch by any woman. Oh my. So Jay advises that he not be alone with this girl or that he stops seeing her entirely. He is much more upset by this comment and starts saying that he couldn't do that because the girl would feel used. Jay insists that as long as nothing had happened, that she wouldn't feel used and better to stop these things before they get too deep. He squirms a little more, saying that maybe they had started getting too deep, and that he couldn't just turn his back on this girl. Jay starts prying more, asking what had happened last night when they hung out, and his voice gets shaky. He starts to talk about how he just couldn't control the situation, and how he didn't know if he could take it back, and how dirty and guilty he felt. There was a pause in his details, silence, and Jay asks, Did you stick it in? I lost my virginity last night. He burst out, obviously in tears on the other end. At this point I'm just rolling around laughing. Jay was taken back by this revelation, but, in good clean return missionary ways told E that he could repent and fix it all if he promised never to do it again. Who knew losing your virginity was something to cry over? A long time ago I was having a conference call with some early investors and my co-founding partner. While on the conference call, he was in Vegas at the time. I can clearly hear he is getting a BJ during the call. This girl was like a damn Dyson vacuum. One of the investors spoke up about 2 minutes after I caught on to what was going on. He asked if he was getting a BJ while presenting our business model. My partner, why yes, I am. The investor, okay, carry on. We ended up closing the deal. Still partners after many decades of success. Not really NSFW, but it could have been if it had continued. At a deposition, in which there are approximately 20 attorneys present and 30 or so on the call in speakerphone. Lead counsel is questioning the witness and we hear a lot of clicks and throat clearing from the speakerphone. Lead counsel stops questioning and says, people on the phone, please mute your lines. We are getting a lot of noise. Thanks. Goes back to questioning. Couple of seconds go by, more clicks. Now sounds like typing. Counsel, please mute your phones. About a minute goes by, then the opening bars of the Game of Thrones theme comes in alternate over the phone. This time, like half the lawyers in the room start yelling, mute your fucking phone. Spoilers, assholes. Oh god, I haven't watched this week. Lead counsel reached over and whacked the disconnect button. Not a conference call moment but close enough. In my days working as an ambulance dispatcher we closely monitored the state fire department's traffic. Most 911 calls went to them, and they would then contact us if they needed us to respond to. We listened so we could shave a few moments off our response and get to our patient in a more timely manner. Anyway, one evening 2 of the dispatchers for State Fire were dispatching a call that had nothing to do with us, so I was only casually listening. Suddenly I realized that the official tone of the dispatch had ended and what was coming over the radio was the casual tone of a private conversation. The industry term for this is open mic, and usually it's benign. This time it wasn't. In this particular case the 2 dispatchers, both female, were discussing a gentleman they had obviously both had sex with. By the way they were talking, this certain gentleman was both inept under the sheets and not well endowed. Also he apparently made noises like an angry yak when his happy moment came. I scrambled to my phone to call these two young ladies and warn them that their microphone was transmitting. I heard their phone ring, but before they answered I heard one of them say how that short-dicked asshole ever became the battalion chief is beyond me, but he certainly didn't fuck his way to the top. Not NSFW in the sexual sense, but one of my friends worked for a judge and was on a conference call with one of the parties to a lawsuit, and someone on their end came into their conference room and asked when the call with that dumb fuck judge was. You could hear the scrambling on the other end as they all jumped up and pulled that guy out of the room as quickly as possible. Needless to say, the judge was not particularly happy. I held a job in sales and a co-worker/friend of mine was on a call with a customer. He thought he had everything sewn up until she told him she was sending the deal out to bid, meaning he would most likely lose the deal and a possible 5-digit commission check. He hung up the phone shortly after and yelled that fucking cunt, only to find that the phone wasn't completely on the hook and she was still on the line. Needless to say, he lost the deal, commission, and eventually was pulled off the account. TL. Doctor, make sure the call has ended before shit talking your customers. My manager at a place I worked at told me about how the other party thought they had the phone on mute on their end and they were talking mad shit about the female manager with him. They were negotiating a contract and she gave them the terms the company wanted, and they wanted to discuss them in private. They said things like, "That dumb cunt thinks she can get that, and that bitch is crazy." Needless to say, both of the guys on the other end were fired, and they got all their demands for the contract and 10% off. When my manager tells the story, he says those guys were right about her. She no longer worked there, and it took a lot out of him to not burst out in laughter. Part of my job is training medical staff on using our medical record software. We usually do this through WebEx, as our clients are all over the country/globe. This particular session, I was retraining a cardiologist who had been using the system for a few weeks and was having difficulty. I had trained his partner before, and that partner was supposed to train this guy, but didn't do a good job of it. I was showing the drive, a shortcut for finalizing and faxing records that we had built specifically for them weeks before. I mentioned this and that I had trained his partner on this feature weeks ago. He stops me, confirms that his partner had known about this for weeks, then says, "Dead serious, I'm going to skin that man's testicles." I've never had to mute the phone during training before, but that day I almost didn't have time to before I fell out of my chair laughing. I was working as a consultant on a software installation and initiated a conference call to introduce the client to the technical resource, i.e. hardware guy, let's call him Bob, for the project. Everyone is on the call and Bob has yet to join, so I text him to find out why he's running late. It turns out that Bob was at the gym and there was excessive traffic, but he says he'll ring in on his cell as soon as he gets inside his house. I notify the client that Bob should be joining soon, and just then the call beeps to notify us that someone has joined. I say, "I believe this is Bob. Bob, introduce yourself." Bob responds with, "Hey, bow, fuck, god damn it, no, shit, fuck." There's a bit of a stunned silence, so I pipe up with, "Bob, we don't know these people well enough to be cursing them out yet. Let's wait until we get further into the project before we do that." Everyone then relaxes a bit, and Bob then explained what happened. In his hurry to get onto the call, he rushed into his house and bumped a rocking chair. His cat was sitting under that chair and got its tail pinched when he brushed it, so it then launched onto his leg. Bob was wearing shorts, so he then reacted quite naturally to the process of having his leg shredded by cursing like a sailor. This happened to me a few years ago. I was working in the adept of a Fortune 100 company leading a high severity incident conference call. Basically, when something was broken, customer facing web portal, critical systems are down/malfunctioning, etc., we would get involved and page the necessary groups to the conference call. I was a solid 20 or 30 minutes into it, and the people we needed were on the conference call and working the issue. An offshore resource from India joined and started asking the kinds of questions you would expect at the beginning of this type of call. I recapped the current status and flatly told him that his team was already on the call and working on it. Over the next few minutes he continued to ask questions and I continued to re-explain what was happening. Finally, in frustration with this guy, I muted my phone and said more to myself than anyone else. Why don't you shut the fuck up and stop asking so many stupid questions? I heard someone gasp out loud on the call in my headset. I turned to look and realized to my horror that I had missed the mute button on my Cisco phone and was in fact live on the conference call. Then, I heard the offshore source say in heavily accented English, "Okay, I'm shutting the fuck up." I didn't know what to do first, laugh or cry. I thought I was so going to be fired. I work with RIM, Research in Motion, who make BlackBerry. So we are always trying to get innuendos thrown in a conference call. My body is an unwilling partner in crime. Hey Steve, do you think you can get that job done for him by the end of the month? Yes, snitch addict, I'll have the RIM job handled. I have to mute my phone because I'm losing my shit. Every Monday my department has a meeting to sync up on what is going on around the group. There are typically between 50 to 75 people in the actual meeting room, and then another 40 or so call in. With the meeting software that we use, everyone can see the presenter's screen, and they can also see who is talking when someone that has called in starts saying something. Basically, a little pop-up shows up that says name is talking in the corner. As you can imagine, with 40 people calling in for this meeting, we like everyone that isn't saying anything to mute their line, so we don't get overwhelmed with background noise. And then if you want to contribute, you can unmute, comment, and then mute again. A few months ago someone that had called in was commenting on how sales figures were going for the remainder of the month, and then we went on to the next topic. The caller, however, had forgotten to mute his line again and proceeded to go to the bathroom. The entire call heard him doing his thing and then flushing, all while name is talking was displayed at the bottom of the screen. This happened a few months ago, and I'm still not sure if anyone has told him.